Hello there. Late last year, my two teenage sons decided that for Christmas they'd quite like to go and see Real Madrid play in their home stadium in Madrid. So I looked into buying tickets, found a good deal, booked it, and then I realised it was Easter weekend, and flights to Madrid were scarce and or expensive. So I had a look around, looked on Ryanair's website, and I found that they flew to Santander. So I decided to make the holiday a little bit of a road trip. We fly to Santander the day before we needed to be in Madrid, hire a car, and drive down to Madrid, then drive back up to fly back from Santander. I did look at various other options, but figured Santander was as good as anywhere else. Instead of flying past Madrid and driving backwards to Madrid, this meant we weren't wasting flight time to drive back anyway. So I looked on the Ryanair website, booked the flights, flying out first thing Friday morning on the 29th of March, and then returning again on Monday the 1st of April, for a total of £542. Now that was just taking the basic option with a small cabin bag, no luggage in the hold, no luggage for the overhead lockers. It'd be fair to say that Ryanair have been in touch fairly regularly, offering me extras for the flight, upgrading my seats to extra legroom, which I'll come back to later on, and transfers, car hire, you name it, they've tried to sell me it. This continued right the way up until the day before the flight, when I logged into the app to check in. Even at this point, there was still the option to pay for fast track, to try and upgrade my seats, to change my allocated seats, and so on. And at this point, it was telling me that the gate number would be announced 2 hours before the flight. So I went into the check-in screen, I selected the flight I wanted to check in for, clicked on the flight, went through and done the check-in now. And again, it was offering me the option to get priority with 2 cabin bags, or to put a bag in the hold for an extra £29 a go, or £29.99 for the check-in bag. But I opted not to do that. And we're still selling fast track and equipment at this stage as well. The whole process was nice and quick and easy. All the passport checking information came up as well. And once I was in, I quickly downloaded boarding passes for the 3 of us for 16A, B and C for our flight out. There then followed a series of messages, basically to remind me how to get on a plane quickly so they can get off the ground as fast as possible. So make sure I get there in time, go to the right gate nice and early, board from the correct door, don't try and put your luggage up in the overhead lockers if you've not paid for it, and so on. Everything designed to get you in and on and off the ground as soon as possible. And this is what my phone was looking like with notifications for all this. So on the Friday morning, we rocked up in the rain as you would expect at Edinburgh Airport. Got through security in good time. The airport was surprisingly busy for the time in the morning, but then it was Good Friday. We did have time to get a top quality breakfast at Wetherspoons and pay double what I paid in Edinburgh for that, before we proceeded to gate 14 and headed down towards the aircraft. We did get paused for a little bit, waiting in the stairwell, while people from another flight were getting moved across in front of us. Then it was time to board, and we all charged out in the rain. And as we were entering in the front door, we had to get up the little air stairs. The aircraft for this flight was a Boeing 737-8200. 3 seats either side of the aisle. Now, despite the fact that the safety briefing mentioned about not losing devices into the pockets, There were no pockets on the seat backs, and the safety cards were actually stuck to the seat in front of you. So you got to read them for the entire flight. They did come around and offer us some breakfast from the menu, which we declined because we just had breakfast in the airport. But breakfast meal deal was like $10.99, which wasn't horrifically expensive. We did take them up on some Coke Zeros though. And the tables are pretty small, and there's not a huge amount of room for people of any height. And this was our biggest complaint about the whole flight, was legroom. I'm 6'5", both my sons are over 6 foot. Unfortunately, one of them's only 14, and you had to be 16 to sit in the XL rows on a Ryanair flight. So we didn't have the option of getting extra legroom. We were stuck with the seats that we had. And after 2 and a bit hours of having your leg wedged against the back of the seat in front, it's not all that comfortable. This was compounded by the fact that we'd opted for the small bags only, so our little North Face bags were tucked under the seats in front as well. So there wasn't a lot of room for manoeuvre with your feet. The armrests between the seats also are pretty short and surprisingly hard, so not particularly comfortable for using. The seats themselves weren't uncomfortable, but they could have done with a bit more padding. And they don't recline, they don't adjust, they are fixed, which I felt for me was a little too upright. We were due to arrive in Santander at 10:55 local time. We were a few minutes late, and by the time we got off the plane, it was around about 11:20. I'd read a lot of comments online about Ryanair landings, so I was expecting something spectacular, like a fighter jet trying to land or an aircraft carrier just slamming onto the deck, but it was actually perfectly fine. The Ryanair app was pretty on the ball. As soon as I connected to the local phone network, it popped up to welcome me to Santander and offer me to book transfers, which I thought was slightly interesting given that I'd used Ryanair to book a hire car via OK Mobility. We had our day in Santander, we popped over to Bilbao, and then we headed down to Madrid for the main event. Even before we got to the football, it was already time to get checked in for heading back. So again, went through the same process. Do you want to upgrade your seats? Well, can't, because one of my passengers is only 14. Gave me instructions on my duty free. I was allowed one bag, but it had to be crammed in my footwell, so I didn't bother with that. And then the check-in, same as before, nice and straightforward. Santander Airport itself, pretty quiet and painless. There's hardly anybody waiting to get through security, so cleared through pretty quickly. We even had enough time to check our baggage to make sure it was still small enough to fit in under the footwells. So, using the official Ryanair size guide, perfect fit, even though the bags were crammed full of souvenirs. With about an hour and 15 minutes till we were due to depart, we were sent through passport control and then put in a waiting area up at the gate, ready to depart. At this point, it was still an hour until we were due to depart. So I checked on flight radar, and the flight was halfway down the Bay of Biscay, so still a good bit out. But as we got closer and closer to our departure time, there was still no sign of the plane. I had a little look on flight radar again, and it was out doing little loops over the sea, apparently to avoid storm clouds. It eventually landed about 12 minutes before we were due to depart. So it arrived at 5:28, we were due to depart at 5:40. As soon as it was on the ground, we were sent over to the gate to get ready to depart. And we headed down to a little shelter down by the tarmac, where we lined up and we waited. The 13 minutes it took for them to get all the passengers off from the moment the wheels stopped, which is pretty good going. Then it was our turn to get on, and it all went pretty smoothly. And around 31 minutes after the wheels had stopped moving, that was the door closed. Total time on the ground from wheels down to wheels up was around about 52 minutes, which is pretty good going, I think. Our arrival time was due to be 7 p.m, so we were a few minutes late thanks to the late departure, but we were off the plane by 7:20, so we weren't particularly late. Once again, the landing was perfectly fine. No worse than I've had with British Airways flying into London City, for example. And as you'd expect, arriving back in Edinburgh, it's exactly as we left it. Cloud, grey skies, and plenty of rain. It's good to be home. Overall then, I was pleasantly surprised with the whole Ryanair experience. No real complaints other than the legroom in the seats, but that's a particular problem for someone my height. And it's just unfortunate they don't have any extra legroom seats which aren't on exit rows. I can see how people would get caught out with having to pay extra for baggage and for fast track, and how the costs could soon start mounting up. But we made a plan where we would only take small bags, we stuck to it, and we didn't have to pay out anything extra, other than a few drinks on the flight. At the end of the day, it's a budget airline. It does exactly what it says on the tin. There's no fancy frills, you have to pay extra for bits that you might get included on more expensive flights elsewhere. But that's not put me off. We're already looking at the Ryanair website to see where we're going to go next. Right, that's all I've got for you in this video. Remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.